Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. So we're going to talk about Google Cloud data protection, and specifically, we're going to double down on best practices and just a little bit of what's new coming up from Veeam product line. So my name is Kirill. I'm Senior Manager Product Marketing of our Cloud Product Marketing division, and I'm joined today by Eric, our Senior Inside System Engineer from the Public Cloud team. Eric, a couple of words about yourself.
Sure, thanks, Kirill. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We've got some good material to show you in a few slides, and then we're going to have some time for questions at the end after a demo. So we've got some good things to share with you today.
Yep, and thanks, Eric. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. So this session is being recorded. You'll be getting both slides and the recording of this session in a couple of days after the session. So we're going to have a small Q&A in the end. So please keep your questions until then. But you also can use the chat box, which you can see on your right, and pop any question in there, and we'll try to answer. We'll try to answer them during the session. So let's jump right in. So we're gonna start talking about the hybrid cloud landscape, and basically this is the data that we got from our own survey, which we conducted independently in 2021. And this is just the data from our own customer base about their expectations and estimations, how their data protection going to shift from on-premises to the cloud. And basically, if you're taking a look from left to right, you can see how estimations changing both pre-COVID and after COVID of what's going to be happening within data center environments in the next 2 to 3 years. And basically, what we're seeing is that the share of physical service in everyone's data center is really declining towards next 2-3 years. Virtual machines still the core foundation of any data center, and that's probably going to stay as is for the next several years. But what we're seeing on the right hand is that the use of public cloud is really, almost skyrocketing, right? And both in terms of estimations and the actual use. This also means that it's not, only about just one public cloud provider, but we've seen from our customer base that different companies using, either 2 or 3 cloud providers for both either testing reasons or maybe some additional precautions. So again, this is just showing what's going on in the hybrid cloud world with projection to the next couple of years. So Eric, just wanted to kind of get your perspective from, given your extended field experience. How this correlates with what really kind of, going on in your day-to-day conversations with our customers.
Yeah, Kirill, I definitely see this this trend reflected in my day-to-day conversations. I talk to organizations of all shapes and sizes every day that tell me things like, yeah, we're in the middle of a cloud migration, we're moving a lot of things to the cloud, or we're moving everything to the cloud, all of our workloads to the cloud. So that's why I think a session like the one that we're doing today is a very timely thing and a good thing to do so that we can share some of these best practices and just a few things that are good to know for organizations like yourselves that are in some phase of moving workloads to the cloud, whether that's a partial or a full migration. So I definitely see that that on the ground reality with a lot of people moving things to the public cloud.
Absolutely. And even though public cloud is not new, right? It's been here for a while. Many of you, I'm sure, already tested using public cloud. Maybe you hosting extensive amount of workloads there, right? But still, what we're seeing again from our own customer base and from some external research is that there are quite a few misconceptions still about data protection in the cloud, right? And the biggest one of them is being that somehow when you move your data to the cloud, it's being automatically backed up or protected, right? Which unfortunately is not the case, which we're going to go deeper in the next slides. right? But let's first start with, what's, again, from the same survey that we conducted in 2021, what's causing the biggest impact when it comes to actual outages, right? So here on the slide, you can see the biggest, threats that happen within data centers of our customer base, and you can see the most impactful of them. And the first, few at the top are pretty much around infrastructure or networking outages, right? So it's something that can be caused externally. Then we have an application software outage, OS, cybersecurity events. Obviously, I mean, ransomware is very much still on the rise and probably going to be the biggest threat out there for the years to come. And then we having some other things like hardware outage, accidental deletions, and so on and so forth, right? So what's important here is that pretty much when we take in this picture and kind of trying to correlate that with the previous slide when we're talking about how many companies are moving to the cloud, we would see that many of these reasons for IT outages still continue to be pretty much the same when it comes to public cloud. The only reason means that probably the first 3 rows are going to be happening on the public provider part, right? So I mean, most of that would not be necessarily seen or visible to the admin, right? I mean, we might not know what's actually going on the AWS or Azure end, right? I mean, we don't know if it's a OS outage or maybe application software, but we're definitely going to feel that, right? However, other things like cybersecurity events or accidental deletion are pretty much, stay the same. I mean, your data being hosted either in the cloud or private cloud or on premises, I mean, still can be attacked from the outside or, still prone to simple user mistake. So Eric, just kind of from your end, right? So do you see any other reasons, which kind of being pertinent only to the public cloud, or pretty much this list here is what we're seeing today from customers who already kind of, migrated to the cloud?
Yeah, Kirill. And a point that you made just a moment ago, I think it just bears repeating. By moving workloads to a public cloud platform, that doesn't automatically fix your fundamental architecture, right? If you're just lifting and shifting, maybe you're coming up on a major application upgrade that would require a lot of capital expenditure to get a lot of new hardware and the operating platform on that hardware, and you'd rather just move things to the cloud and let them take care of those underlying services and whatnot that power your applications. And we'll touch on that here in just a moment, talking about the shared responsibility model. But the cloud isn't just an automatic catch-all to just solve all your problems. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but it bears mention. So one of the points I'll make about that is each of the public cloud providers has well-architected frameworks or best practice guides that are really great resources that I would commend to you, whether you're in the cloud or whether you're evaluating the cloud, to just review those and just make sure that when you are moving those workloads to public cloud, you're aware of how things are set up there and what you're actually signing up for. Because a lot of those, like we see here, this infrastructure networking outages, that would include how you have things set up, how you have your infrastructure set up in the public cloud. So there are some things that are just a part of your architecture and how you have things running up there. But other things that we see, it like you just said, Kirill, it applies no matter where you're running. You can have a cybersecurity event in the cloud or on-prem. A lot of these metrics kind of stay the same. So we still need some data protection solutions.
Absolutely. And I mean, one thing when you're taking a look at the migration to the cloud is that, well, at least at the end of the day, you have someone else to blame for some of the outages, right? I mean, if infrastructure falls down, I mean, well, it's going to be on the AWS end or Azure end. So I mean, at least that kind of falls off your shoulder. But nonetheless, if we jump to the next slide, we'll see, I mean, what else kind of specifically worrisome to users who already kind of moved somewhere close to the cloud. And you can see that We all know about some, again, infrastructure issues which can happen on the side of the public cloud provider. But now, again, now that it's kind of on their end, right, it's on their plate, such things like user error or accidental deletions, again, malware and other security threats, they are popping into to become the most kind of concerning issues, because that's something that Azure or AWS or Google Cloud will not be able to deal with, right? That's something that's completely on your shoulders, essentially, right? And something that any company that decides to move to the cloud will have to deal with, right? And Eric, you just mentioned the shared responsibility model, so it might be a good time to kind of jump straight to that and maybe discuss a little bit, what it really is, and why it's crucial and important for an understanding before making any step towards the cloud migration. So basically, again, every public cloud provider has what's being called shared responsibility model, or in the Google Cloud case, shared responsibility matrix. Right? It's out there. It's public. It's something that Google provides right away. It's you can go out, Google it and look it up, essentially, right? What's crucial here is that Google identifies that to any relation, any case of data being in the cloud, it comes down to responsibility of two parties, right? One being Google and one being you, the customer, right? So right from the start, there is the specific line being drawn on the sand, which says, hey, this is what I'm responsible for as a company, as a Google providing you the infrastructure, but this is what you are responsible for as a customer. And if you take a look at comparison from, with on-prem, you would see that, yeah, correct. Like everything which is on-prem is pretty much in customers' hands. I mean, it's customers' responsibility. But then if you go to the other part of the scale and you're starting to use some sort of, software as a service solution, which is being hosted on Google Cloud, you would see that pretty much everything is being taken care of, right? From from the hardware to deployment of specific applications. Everything that's kind of running in the backend is maintained by Google. But then everything which comes down to content, access policies, is still a customer's responsibility. Doesn't matter which model you use, doesn't matter which application you use, doesn't matter if you just put your backups to the to the cloud. Content, which equals data, and access policies are still your responsibility. So Eric, I just kind of wanted to go back to you and discuss a little bit, why it's crucial to, really dig into cloud shared responsibility metrics before, making any further step into the cloud migration, and what it does really mean for when choosing the data protection solution.
Yeah, it's a great question, Kirill. When you are looking at using a public cloud platform, whether you're in that evaluation stage or you're at some stage in your cloud journey, as you'll hear us and other people call it, you get to a point where you say, okay, I'm responsible for this data no matter where it goes. So that data is always my responsibility to protect it and to keep it safe and secure. So, how do I do that? Because now we're talking about, we have things that are on-prem, like that hybrid story that we saw earlier. We have things in the public cloud. Maybe that public cloud platform is a place that we manage somewhere in your own organization, or maybe you co-manage that with a partner. Whatever your approach is, you have to have a very clear understanding of who is responsible for that data and how is it being managed. And that needs to be a crystal clear, responsibility line here, which is why we talk about this slide and this point a lot, so that you're aware of what you're actually being provided as part of the services of the public cloud versus what you and or any stakeholder is responsible for when you're putting your content into a public cloud platform. So I actually now I'll move to the next bit here, which is about, Okay, so we need a backup solution because we're responsible for that data that we're putting in the public cloud, or really anywhere where that data and those workloads run. So what has Veeam kind of developed to help us protect these things that are in the public cloud? Because a lot of people, when they say the name Veeam, it's really synonymous with Veeam backup and replication. They say Veeam, and that's just the picture that they have in mind is of Veeam backup and replication, which a lot of organizations, over 400,000 out there, have used to protect workloads that run on VMware and Hyper-V and on physical systems. So increasingly, as we have more and more of our customers moving workloads to public cloud platforms, we need to have solutions that speak the language of the cloud or are cloud native to protect those workloads. And so that's what really the slide here is about, and that the sort of the story of how these public clouds are protected with these cloud native solutions from Veeam. So just starting on the left, I'm just going to work our way left to right from this 1, 2, 3 here. So we've got some workloads in the public cloud running as instances or VM instances. So you'll see a lot of different terms, but basically it's a compute service that runs VMs. Okay. So we have those workloads, we have some storage attached to them, and the first step of Veeam protecting those workloads is using the cloud platform to create a snapshot. And so we can keep a certain number of those snapshots so that you can keep that data as close to the source instances as possible, so that when you need to do a restore, that restore is very, very quick. Because for certain use cases, you're going to want a restore to happen as quickly as possible. And the quickest way to do that is with a snapshot. So that's kind of step one, is we use the platform to create a snapshot. Now, that snapshot data lives in the same region and the same account as where the workloads run. So obviously, that gives us a form of backup and restore point that we can recover from, but we might want a copy of that data somewhere else to follow Veeam's 3-2-1 model. So the second step here is actually Veeam using those snapshot resources to create cloud native Veeam backups. And so we use that snapshot to create Veeam image level backups, and we store that in that respective cloud's object storage, which in Google's case is just called Google Cloud Storage. So that's step two. Then step three here is something that we see a lot from Veeam's customers, which is I want to be able to use that data outside of the platform that it was created in. So on the left, we've got this box with a little cloud in the top left of that box that's basically showing you what you can do within that cloud platform. Now, if I want to use that backup data outside of that cloud, I need that data in a format that's not tied to that public cloud platform. And so that's really what step three is about, and that's what you can do with that Veeam backup data that lives in the cloud provider's object storage. So if you connect Veeam backup and replication to that external repository in Veeam's or VBR's parlance, that external repository is basically a read-only repository where VBR can now use that Veeam formatted backup data to do things like a file level recovery. So you can browse through that restore point that's in an object storage and see the different files that are in that restore point in object storage. You can do backup copy jobs. So VBR can copy that backup data out of Google Cloud and copy it on-prem somewhere, and maybe scale it out even to a different public cloud provider. So that backup copy job gives you some data portability. The instant VM recovery. A lot of people love Veeam for this because of its ability to recover workloads very quickly. So we can use that Veeam backup data that was created of that Google Cloud VM instance and even recover that Google Cloud VM instance to our on-premises environment if we want to bring things home, so to speak. Then you can restore things to other platforms. So because that data is portable and it's in Veeam format, you can use VBR to convert those VMs between different platforms or those compute instances to run in different environments. So that's kind of the overview here of Veeam's cloud native protection story and how that kind of works together with these different cloud native products. So now I'm going to hand it back to Kirill to talk specifically about what Veeam does in Google Cloud. So Kirill, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Eric. And before we jump into the next slide, just real quick, right? You mentioned a lot of things, right? I mean, beautifully describing the whole kind of again architecture overview. But again, just to reiterate, quite a few things I'm liking on the previous slides. Is that again, first of all, the multiple options to to do recovery just your way, right? I mean, in the end of the day, it's your data. It's just about what you want to do with it, how you want to kind of kind of manage it depending on retention policies, right? And Veeam provides you multiple options, right? From file level recovery to instant restore to even a different public cloud provider, right? It's Veeam is completely, I mean, from the very start historically, Veeam is being, first of all, storage agnostic, and now we sort of kind of going to be cloud agnostic, right? In a way that we want you to have a full control of your data and move it around with portable licensing format, and again just restore it in any way you'd like it to be restored. And one more thing before we go to the next slide again. So if you go in with Veeam Backup Replication, right? So it's also very kind of ready to go tool for you to start migrating to the cloud, right? I mean, you can do backup and then kind of restore to Azure and AWS or Google, and then from on-prem, and then it's kind of the first very seamless step towards cloud migration. So again, some of our customers using Veeam Backup Replication for that specific purpose, and again, a lot of great use cases on that. So now we're going to dive deeper into Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. And as you can see on this slide, we essentially have two packages, two options for how you can get acquainted with that solution. So if you're looking for, let's say, strictly protecting data within Google Cloud Platform, you don't really go in with a hybrid scenario. You don't have workloads on-prem. Maybe you're one of those companies that are sort of like born in the cloud and you're interested in backing up specific, maybe a specific DevOps environment, or just whether testing or developing anything just on their end in Google Cloud. You can go with Veeam Backup for Google Cloud, which is a dedicated Google native solution, which also has a free version, which is available on Google Cloud Marketplace, and allows you to, again, natively in a policy-based fashion, protect workloads in Google Cloud, right? There are many options for how you can back up, build your retention policies, move some of the backups to the archive if you need them for compliance reasons and you're not planning to touch them, every so often. You can also move backups to different projects, which again provide an additional layer of security, and so on and so forth. So many great options, which we're going to discuss in some further slides. But if you maybe already using Veeam Backup Replication today, if you are utilizing the the hybrid model, or you're planning to test some different public cloud providers, right? Veeam Backup Replication is the go-to option for you because Veeam Backup for Google Cloud is actually integrated into Veeam Backup Replication, right? So you can, from this very same console that you're using for your on-prem environments, you can deploy application for Google Cloud. You can immediately see Google Cloud as a backup target. You can offload backups there. You can also, create different additional resources to host your backups there. And again, it's all provided from one single console, so you have this kind of single pane of glass view of all your workloads, both on-prem, both in Google Cloud, and maybe in some other public cloud provider. So I think there was a good question actually in the chat, just real quick, about how Veeam would handle Kubernetes workloads in GCP. So just real quick, and maybe Eric, you would have something to add on top of that as well. We do have custom solution by Veeam, which is a native backup solution for backing up everything Kubernetes. So look that up after our webinar, or drop us an email to the mailbox, which we will show you in the end of the session. But we definitely have a very much native solution for that. Eric, let me know if you want to add on top of that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a very common use case that we see a lot with people that are using Google Cloud, using Google Kubernetes Engine, GKE. So yeah, definitely look up Kasten after this session is done. It's a dedicated Kubernetes backup product that Veeam acquired in the recent past, and we're integrating that into our platform as well. But it's a Kubernetes native solution. It actually runs as a Kubernetes cluster. So it's a great thing to look into. Definitely a good point.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So let's move to the next slide and just quickly go through some of the features before we dive into the demo part, which I would believe is the most interesting part. So basically, when we're talking about what Veeam can do for Google Cloud, I mean, it all kind of lies on a few pillars or a few capabilities, right? So first of all, we come in with their simplicity, right? So again, there is some functionality which already exists in Google Cloud with when you can do some snapshots with the native tools. You can even set up some scripts to do it instead of just manual snapshots. But at scale, I mean, it would hardly work for for many companies. I mean, it's just a lot of manual work. It's a lot of IT overhead, and it's simply not scalable, right? So what we provide within Veeam solution is that, I mean, the policy-based automation, right, using the same native technology, native snapshot technology of Google, right? And it's very straightforward. It's very simple. It's the famous "it just works" Veeam approach that, I mean, we kind of bring in from Veeam Backup Replication into Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. As we already mentioned, many options for fast and flexible recovery. Again, for you to achieve almost near zero recovery time objectives. Many options from individual files and folders, to the full VM recovery, even to other cloud provider. And we almost didn't talk about the cost efficiency, but again, cost is something that's might be a very big issue for those who just come in fresh to the cloud, right? It's all good until the bill comes in, right? So there are a lot of different issues you might face with egress cost, with cost for moving data, and so on and so forth. So it's only right to utilize archive options which are provided by different cloud providers to the full extent, right? So I mean, usually it's being separated into hot, cold, and archive type of storages, meaning that some of the workloads you might be keeping even as snapshots in the hot tier, right? Something that you might be able to retrieve really quickly. I mean, if there is an accidental email deletion or something like that. But some of the data, you can only keep for, you only need to keep for compliance reasons, right? Maybe once a year you need to, get it from the backup just to show for some audit reasons or anything like that. So for that, you can use the archive options, which provided by Google Cloud Storage. And again, Veeam provides you capability to automatically tier it to either archive, hot, or cold storage options. Before we dive into the next slide, Eric, anything to add on top of that?
Yes, Kirill. There's just one thing I'll add to the points that you're making on this slide. When we talk about customers that are in a hybrid environment, you've got a lot of different control interfaces, right? You've got maybe your vCenter console that's helping you manage your workloads on-prem. You've got different SaaS platform consoles. You've got different consoles for those different public cloud platforms. So one of the benefits here that Veeam offers in terms of that set it and forget it design is that all of these different public cloud solutions and all of the consoles for those solutions, number one, they all look and operate the same. So if you're going from the Google console to the AWS console, the look and feel, the way you create policies, it's really exactly the same, except for just a few differences in the public cloud platforms, right? Then, these things, like you mentioned before, they all work together with Veeam backup and replication. So really that can be your central place to manage all of your different backup policies and kind of get some insight into how your backups are behaving across your entire organization. And there's a lot to be said for that, because there's a lot of different skill sets that are required to manage and monitor and migrate these things into the cloud. And so anything that can bring you some simplicity or that can simplify your operations, especially around something crucial like data protection, is an incredibly valuable thing. So that's another thing I see people responding to Veeam very positively for very often. So I'll just add that point to this, and then of course we've got some more points that we want to share in the next slide, Kirill.
Absolutely, thanks, Eric. So yeah, let's get to the next slides, and let's talk about security. I mean, obviously, this is the #1 priority for many customers. Our customers considering to move to the cloud. I mean, that's understandable, right? When you kind of giving away data to being hosted somewhere, I mean, that should be the first question, right? I mean, is it secure? I mean, what other measures being taken for to prevent any unwanted access? What happens if if the Google Cloud Data Center goes down? What happens if the whole region goes down? So on and so forth, right? So there is a set of Google Cloud best practices which Veeam does support and provide also additional measures on top of that, right? And I'm going to just go over them real quick. So first of all, I mean, there is a 99.999% redundancy, which is provided by Google Cloud SLAs. And I mean, basically, if one region goes down, there is usually an availability zone in that region, which kind of will make sure you still have access to your data, that your customers still have access to your data. And they do provide specific best practices in terms of who has to have access to different policies, to backup policies, to options for restore, who has access to the whole kind of infrastructure. And Veeam support all that with extensive role-based access control. So you can get up to 3 different roles to assign for managing your backups, right? So for example, someone can have opportunity to only do the restore, right? While someone else can actually assign different policies and manage the whole infrastructure, right? We also support encryption. Just to make sure there is an additional layer of security, as well as cross-project recovery. So I mean, if something goes bad or you just need to quickly restore your workload, you can do that in a cross-project fashion, which again can be very handy in some specific situation. Cloud mobility, right? Again, something that Eric really well described in previously about Veeam does not really build any boundaries when it comes to moving your data, right? We do not charge you on top of any egress costs from Google, right? We let you move your data as you want. You can migrate it to the cloud with the help of our direct restore to the cloud function. You can move it back to on-prem. You can restore it to a different cloud provider. We'll let you do all that. I mean, it's the same backup format, VBK, which you might be familiar with if you're working with Veeam on-prem. So we support all that. We support that model coming to the cloud, and essentially, again, you can move it across your cloud, virtual, physical, and now even Kubernetes environment. Last but not least, one platform, right? Something that again we mentioned previously, that if you go in with the Veeam backup replication option, right, you get the all-in-one fully integrated solution for managing both cloud, virtual, physical, and also Kubernetes and SaaS environments, right? So you get in one console, one access to all policies, one monitor dashboard, and I mean, this is really something that is unique, and we are very proud at Veeam to provide that kind of opportunity, you can really manage all your data from one place. You can again migrate it, monitor, and prevent any potential data loss that can occur either on the cloud, virtual, physical space. Before moving to the demo, which I think is the next, Eric, any additional comments on this specific part?
No, I think you covered this wonderfully, Kirill. That bit about greater security and compliance. Again, having the one platform to manage your backups and to have the ability to pull reports on these different backup policies and backup jobs from one platform. That's a very valuable capability to have in your tool set, right? Because a lot of the times we need the ability to retain our restore points and our data intelligently in a cost-effective way, but then we have to actually, prove to someone that we're doing our due diligence on protecting that data, depending on what industry vertical we're in. That may be, even a regulatory compliance for us. So that's a really important bit there about having the one platform to manage your data protection across on-prem and cloud.
Thanks, Eric. And I think we have one more slide before we go into the demo. Just giving us a quick snapshot that Veeam Backup for Google Cloud is available today through the Google Cloud Platform Marketplace. Again, there is a free version of it where you can protect up to 10 workloads for free. So I mean, basically, nothing stops you from going there, launching it, and seeing for yourself what we've just been talking about on this. On this webinar today. Again, you have two options. You can do it either standalone, again, directly from the marketplace, or integrated as a part of Veeam Backup Replication. You can deploy it through Veeam Backup Replication console, so there is no need to install any additional plugins. Scalable, I mean, obviously that's coming with any Veeam solution, right? We support pretty much as many as Google Cloud Platform. As many workloads as Google Cloud Platform would be able to fit, right? So, I mean, if there are even any scalability issues, that probably would be coming from the infrastructure, and we would be able to protect, them all as long as their public cloud provider supports that amount of workload. Policy-driven, again, everything is automated, policy-based. You can set up as any policies that you want. Again, you can set up any retention policies and doing backups up to pretty much every 60 seconds. So again, a lot of flexibility is there. We're using Google native snapshot technology, right? So again, this is a native solution. We're not utilizing agents or any other legacy technology. Cost effective that we mentioned, which we can use with the utilizing archive tier. And obviously we went over some security features as well. So let's now jump to the demo, and then I think we'll have a few minutes for your questions as well. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kirill. And I think this is a great conversation to have about, just what are some best practices here. So I'm going to actually switch my window now away from the PowerPoint deck to just a web browser. And in my web browser, you'll see I'm in my GCP, my Google Cloud Platform console. I'm just kind of on a home screen here in a demo environment. So the first thing that I want to point out about, if you want to try out Veeam Backup for Google Cloud, just to reiterate that point that Kirill, that you made about there being a free edition. So you just go to the marketplace, and if you go to the marketplace here, you'll search for Veeam, and you'll see that we have a listing there for Veeam Backup for Google Cloud Platform. So I'm just going to select that, and actually when I go to launch the solution, I don't have to choose anything. I have some information about Veeam Backup for Google Cloud, but you can try it out for completely for free, up to backing up 10 instances. The only real catch there is because it's a free edition, the support is email only, and it's not like a production grade support. So if I just hit launch here, what we're going to be launching essentially is a VM instance that's going to run in our environment that hosts the Veeam backup for Google Cloud Console. So that means that this is not a hosted solution. You know, we're not hosting the backup infrastructure. We're not hosting your backup data. We're putting you in full control, like Veeam always has, of using your existing platform and controlling your backup solution and your backup data within that platform. So I'm not going to do a walkthrough of actually deploying the appliance. All of this is well documented in our user guide, which you can look on veeam.com for, and we kind of walk through the deployment process in that user guide. But essentially, when you're done, I'm going to go to my compute engine now and look at my list of VM instances. So once I'm over here, you'll see I've got a Veeam backup for Google Cloud demo VM. That's what we're going to be looking at in our second tab here for just a few moments together. And that is the VM that's hosting my console. And I have a couple of VMs here that I'm interested in backing up within this project. I do want to point out, though, that one of the cloud best practices in general, no matter which public cloud you're in this case, we're talking about Google Cloud, separating your backup solution and your backup data on a account or project or subscription basis from where your production VMs and your production data lives, that's a good practice, because this is how the cloud is architected to give you control over who has access to what, over your security. So the example I commonly use is if someone were to compromise, this identity, right, and they were to have access to delete these VMs, if they are deleting these VMs, and that includes my production VMs and my backup solution, then I have a really bad day. I need to be able to recover, my data from somewhere else. If they are also going in this project where this particular user has full admin rights, and they were to go into the cloud storage service and delete my buckets, then I've suffered a catastrophic data loss. So deploying Veeam, for example, into its own dedicated project, and then configuring the cross-project backups, I can access VMs that are in other Google Cloud projects and protect them with Veeam running in a separate project. So that multi or cross-project support or cross-account support that we have built into all of the public cloud solutions, it gives you the ability to follow that best practice of separating that backup solution, that backup data, from that production workload and that production data. Okay, so we're going to dive in now just to the Veeam backup for Google Cloud Console, which I've got on this IP address right here, and I have that mapped to a nice, pretty DNS name because we do demos of this all the time. So I've just got that pulled up in my second tab here, and if I go to my second tab, I've got my Veeam backup for Google Cloud Console. So it's a web-based solution where you can do all the management of your backup policies and do restores from the web console. So when I first log in, I would see an overview page that would just kind of give me a recent history of events, things that the appliance is doing for me, like running policies and then rescanning, different things to kind of keep up to speed about what's in your cloud account or your projects. So initially, just to kind of give you an overview here of what you would be doing when you deploy the appliance. The first thing that you'd be doing is adding your projects. So you would first connect your Veeam backup for GCP product to to the project where the appliance is running. So once you have that service account configured for where Veeam backup for GCP is running, then you could add your other projects one by one if you wish, or you can add multiple using the REST API to be able to create managed snapshots of instances that are in those other projects, create managed backups. If you want to do restore operations, you can add that permission here. And then, for those other projects, we might not want to be putting our backup data in that production project, right? So we don't need to create repositories in that other project. We're also going to talk for just a moment about workers, about how Veeam creates those backups. So I'm not going to need to create workers in that project either. because I'm fundamentally interacting with that snapshot. So this would be a perfectly reasonable set of permissions that I want to have Veeam to have access to from that other project. And again, this is all documented in the user guide. I'm just kind of giving you an example here of what that would look like. So let's see here if I were to go next. Then I would just specify what I want that service account name to be. Let's just say Veeam service account, right? And one of the things that's really handy in terms of getting up and running with this is that service account probably does not exist in that project yet. I haven't created it. So I can actually have Veeam generate and download that script that I can run from my Google Cloud Shell just with a list of commands in that text file. So I can just copy and paste that into a Google Cloud Shell, and then I've got my project added to Veeam. So it's really simple to add your projects to the appliance. Okay, now the second thing that we want to talk about just from an architecture standpoint is these workers. So like we've mentioned before, this is a policy-based solution that is going to create backups of your VM instances, fundamentally using those VM snapshots or the disk snapshots. So when we create those disk snapshots as part of a policy running, we're going to need to do something to generate a Veeam backup file or Veeam backup data using the data that's in that snapshot. So this worker configuration is what we specify to say, where can Veeam put these temporary little worker instances to generate that Veeam data and store it directly in cloud storage. So I don't have to have persistent disk storage configured here. The worker is going to spin up, generate the Veeam data using that snapshot and store it directly in cloud storage. And then that worker instance is deleted or terminated. So that's just our way, again, of scaling, with the size of your environment and, not having to sort of manage a lot of backup infrastructure in an ongoing basis. You have the appliance that you're managing and you set up your policies to do what you want Veeam to do. Last step of the configuration or the getting started is just adding your repositories. So you would specify, what repositories or what Google Cloud Storage accounts buckets do you want to use to store Veeam backups. So we would go through an add process here. We'd give the repository a name. We'd say, now which project does that repository live in? Once we've selected our project, then we're actually going to select the bucket and either use an existing folder if we've got existing Veeam backup for GCP backups, or create a new folder. Then we can select a storage class, and you'll see right back here that I've got a couple different storage classes that we support, which is standard and archive. So standard is what you would typically use for dailies and weeklies. And that gives you the greatest flexibility to store your backups with a minimal put cost, which is associated with doing object storage operations. And then we also support archive storage for those long-term retention points, like our monthlies and our yearlies, where I might not touch that data on a regular basis or maybe even ever, but I need that for compliance purposes. So we can set up that archive repository using the very low cost archive storage class. Okay, so where I kind of want to just wrap up on this configuration conversation is that from going to the marketplace to deploying the appliance, to adding your projects and specifying the worker configurations, adding your repositories, you can be up and running with Veeam Backup for GCP in about 15 to 20 minutes. It's a very easy product to configure and get set up for you to be ready to start protecting GCP VMs. So let's talk now about just the policies for a moment, where we can look at what a policy looks like. So I've got this policy already configured here, where I'm protecting those two VMs that I mentioned earlier. So I can easily filter down between different individual VMs. If I had any warnings or failures, if I'm just browsing this console, it's a really simple and fast way to see what my statuses are. Okay, so if I open up a policy, let's just see the meat and potatoes here. I give it a name and a description, and I can choose my sources. So this is the project I would be backing up from. Then I can say, now in that project, I want to protect with this policy VMs that are in which region, or or which regions. So I could select one or multiple regions here, and I've just got one selected in this case. And then I'd say, now what do I want to protect in those regions in that project? So then I can select either all of my VMs that I want to protect in this project in those regions, or I can select instances on a case-by-case basis, like I'm choosing the individual instances, or I can even you select instances based on labels that you have applied to your instances. So it doesn't have to be named anything in particular here. It can be any label that you're using in your organization, so that you can use those existing labels to key the policies on, so that it knows what to look for, what is it protecting. Okay, then I can say, now for my targets, I'm going to enable backups, and I'm going to store the backups created by this policy in which repository. So I could choose from a list of repositories here. And then I could say, now I know that for this policy, I want to enable my backup archiving. So I'm going to choose an archive repository here, where I can store some of those long-term retention points, again, for like those monthlies and yearlies that I want to have a very low storage cost for. Okay, so it's mad about my encryption settings there. If we go next, we can say for my scheduling, I can enable this daily retention, where I configure my daily policy. So let's just look at this for just a moment. I would say, now I want to select, when I want Veeam to do different things. So I can do snapshots throughout the day. I can do more than one per hour if I want to get really fine-grained inside the hour. And then I'm going to select how many of those snapshots I want to keep, and then how long I'm going to keep those backup restore points. So I can get really granular here with what I'm choosing to do and when, and then how long am I keeping those different restore points. Final couple points I'll make here is that as you're building this policy, let's go ahead and enable this weekly retention schedule, right? Okay, great. So let's do a few more here, and then let's do maybe 3 months worth. Great. So as I'm building my policy, in the top right up here, I have a cost estimation. So because we're not hosting that backup data, you're not paying Veeam for storing the data, you're paying Google for it. We're giving you an idea of what your storage costs could be based on some assumptions that we make about the size of these VMs and their actual size of their disks. And the assumption is, we assume those disks are 70% occupied, and we assume that the data churn is going to be about 3% daily on these VMs that are containing this policy. And so that gives us a way to use the list prices for these different services and different operations we're doing in Google to give you an idea of what that policy could cost you before you even save it. Okay, so then you're kind of wrapping up the policy here. We can automatically retry a certain number of times. We can enable notifications for someone to get an email in case something goes awry, and then you're ready to save your policy. Now, lastly, really quickly is, what does our restore options within Veeam Backup for GCP look like? And then I want to leave a couple minutes for questions and for us to wrap up. So, we can do a full VM or instance restore from a snapshot or a backup. Both are image level restore points, so we can just choose a snapshot or a backup and restore that instance from a given point in time to the same project or even to a different project. Then we can also do a disk restore or a file level recovery. So a disk restore would say, I just want this one specific disk attached to this instance from a given point in time. And a file level recovery would actually allow us to use the worker instances I spoke about earlier to give us a browsable file system from that restore point that we select here, so that we can actually pick and choose which files we want from that given restore point and download those files to our local system. Okay, so I know we've covered a lot of ground here talking about best practices, about how you can deploy Veeam Backup for GCP, some of the different integration capabilities that Veeam Backup for GCP has with Veeam Backup and Replication. One of those that I can show you really quickly is just the fact that I have my licensing for this appliance managed by Veeam Backup and Replication. So I can use those Veeam Universal licenses to protect workloads no matter which platform they're running in. So I have this particular appliance we're looking at integrated with Veeam Backup and Replication, and that allows me to use those universal licenses to protect Google Cloud VMs, Azure SQL instances, RDS instances, and EC2 instances in AWS. It doesn't matter what platform it's running in, I can use Veeam to protect it. So with that, Kirill, I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint deck, and we just want to begin wrapping up and just leaving a little time for question here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eric. As always, just, great demo, great overview. Hopefully we covered, just enough ground for you to, just understand how basically our technology works here, and then, you could go out and try it for yourself. Again, there is a free version out there on the marketplace. So let's just quickly go through a couple of slides before we jump into questions. So I really wanted to touch base real quick on that. Veeam plus Google story really extends to a lot of things, and obviously we talked today mostly about how to protect workloads in the Google Cloud Platform. Obviously there is an integration story with Veeam Backup Replication, through which you can also use Google Cloud Storage simply for basically unlimited long-term retention with our cloud tier function. Again, you don't necessarily have to migrate to the cloud to take advantage of it for basically utilizing it as a cheap storage, as a cheap backup repository. Again, data portability, right? With Veeam Universal License, you can move data around. Veeam does not charge you on top of any specific egress cost from a public cloud provider. And in case you're using Google Cloud VMware Engine, we get you covered there as well, right? So we provide functionality to back up those workloads there as well. So, and the last but not least, right? If you would like to learn, what we got up our sleeve in terms of upcoming product launches and some other initiatives. Very soon, pretty much within a month from now, they're gonna be VeeamON 2022, which is, if you don't know, our biggest conference of the year, where we're gonna have a huge panel of different experts, including our own, Danny Allen, who is Chief Technology Officer, Anton Gostev, who is Senior Vice President of Product Management and R&D, to talk about what's coming up in the Veeam product line, including some updates for Veeam Backup for Google Cloud, as well as Veeam Backup for AWS and Azure. You can attend for free as a part of kind of virtual format. Again, you will get the same access to the content as if you would attend in person. However, if you'd like to attend in person, there'll be much more for you there in terms of training and certification options, as well as obviously great networking possibilities in actually participating in some activities which will be available in the virtual format. And if you register before May 1st, you'll get a chance to win these amazing custom sneakers, and I believe you even can choose what design they'll be. So take a look at, keep an eye on our social media, and you'll find all the details there. So let's jump to the questions real quick. So let me just kind of go through the Q&A panel. So probably a question to you, Eric. So you might be covered that in the demo, but let's just reiterate here. So backing up virtual machines in GCP. So is this, let me just go slowly through this one. So basically, do we back up virtual machines in GCP, or does Veeam also back up Google application data?
Yeah, so good question, and we've had a few of these here about Google application data, or G Suite. So this product is about backing up resources that are in Google Cloud Platform. which is basically Google's equivalent platform as like AWS or Azure, where you can run VMs in their cloud infrastructure. So the application data or G Suite is a common request, but we have nothing to share about that today. So thank you for the question. But yeah, this is specifically about backing up VM instances.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And again, if you have any feature requests or any specific scenario, right, you can always go to forums.veeam.com, where you'll get, pretty much any questions around our product answered rather quickly directly by our R&D team. So next question before we wrap up is Veeam Google Cloud Backup has a tool for anti-ransomware, right? Is there any capability for ransomware protection there? So Veeam, first and foremost, as a data protection company, we provide a set of both theoretical best practices known as 3-to-1 rule, but also some capabilities to mitigate and prevent any ransomware impact, right? It's not the anti-ransomware tool per se, right? I mean, which would be more like antivirus software, but we do provide a few features which will help you, again, prevent and mitigate any potential ransomware effect, right? So first of all, if you're using Veeam Backup Replication, we do have a number of features which are called specifically like Secure Restore, where you can scan backups prior to restore to make sure there is no malware, no ransomware in there. There is a native connection to some most known antiviruses to make sure your backups are scanned to the full degree. But also, again, if we're talking specifically just Google Cloud protection, again, we provide both a few theoretical frameworks, but also some features which would allow you to minimize access to the backups, but also, again, to build as many layers of security as possible. For example, you can move your backups to another project, right? So even if there is, if your current project is compromised, your backups are being out there in a different project with different access credentials, and I mean there'll be no way for that particular ransomware to get there. Eric, anything to add on top of that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that's a great overview there, Kirill. The Veeam platform in general has a lot of different, well, I'm like you. I won't say anti-ransomware, where that's more of the sort of the responsibility of an antivirus or an anti-malware solution. A secure backup is sort of your last line of defense. So we're really focused about protecting your backup data from any unauthorized access. And one of the most fundamental ways you can do that in public cloud is separate that backup data from your production data. The only other thing I would add is just that with Veeam Backup Replication, there's also a lot of different options around immutability, where you can make your backups basically unchangeable for a certain period of time, so that nothing could even theoretically alter or modify or delete your backup data when it is marked as immutable. So that was just one point I'll touch on here. But that's all I want to add today there, Kirill.
Absolutely. No, great point. Great point. Yeah. So thanks everyone again for attending today. If we didn't cover your question during the live session, we'll definitely get back to you through the email. So keep an eye on your inbox. And definitely, again, in a couple of days, you'll see this recorded session coming in with slides. So thanks again, everyone.